Recording. All right, there we go. And we're here. Let's see if this Zoom works instead of getting stuck on Kali's boobs like it did yesterday.
Which was hilarious.
It was kind of funny, right? As long as it was in the middle of a kind of a crazy story, though, so that seemed a tad bit inappropriate. Anyway, welcome back. Oh, geez, look what happened. Look what's happening. This is why we need a podcast producer.
Same thing.
Dear Lord. Look at it, still going. All right, so maybe that doesn't work. We're figured it out. I don't know. Bunch of iPhones. Anyway, hey, welcome back. You too, Mrs. Ryan. Hi.
Hi, welcome back.
We are here alone today, which is a bit of a surprise since we thought we'd have a guest. Our guest canceled because he has a sinus infection and a couple other things, and it just woke up disaster. So he is going to the urgent care, and he will be with us earlier next week. That's Jonathan Hirsch, the medicinal marijuana guy we talked about yesterday. By the way, that's not all he does. He's an expert on a number of things.
I looked up his LinkedIn, and it says something about neurology. So, I keep
The truth is,
confused.
he used to be in the entertainment industry like the rest of us, and I know him from, I know him from when we worked on, it doesn't matter, I worked on some projects with him. He used to be an art department guy and a prop maker, and some of the bigger jobs that I've worked on, he's been on as well. He's a very talented guy, but he has sort of left the business like the rest of us and is dedicating his life to other things. And it's not just the medicinal marijuana stuff. I don't want to make it sound like that's his only thing. But anyway, yeah, he will be here next week, so that's why he's not here today. Sorry about that. But Mrs. Ryan and I were thinking that this would be a great opportunity to have a real talk about yesterday's podcast.
Yeah.
And yesterday's podcast was with Kali Landano, a producer and a friend of ours, the one we met through, as well as an author and a producer on our projects. But during that talk, we went off track a little bit. Would that be fair?
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. You tell me.
I watched it again because I was super self-conscious about it. What I took away from it is that you and I, which we know, but it was obvious yesterday that topics and themes are what we don't necessarily stick to. And so when someone comes in with their own agenda, whether they know it or not, it throws the apple cart off.
Okay. Your apple cart or the whole apple cart?
The whole apple cart, because then the whole conversation is up for grabs and it can go anywhere. And with someone who we love intimate, have a friendship with that we know that well, it can go into all different kinds of places, especially when her book is about really dark shit and our project is about the lighter part of some really dark shit. And so when
the truth is you're right. We made it seem very depressing and dark and stuff, whereas it's not. It's actually really awesome. But that's the nitty gritty of it. There was a moment way back when, and you're right. We spent a little too much time on it. Would that be fair?
I think, without expanding to the real project, which is, I think, when
we never did get there.
And it kicked off with, talk to the old publicist about it. And then I came back and I was like, what is this? So
that was my fault by calling you the old publicist. Then you came back as the old publicist.
It showed me how I get triggered in, physically, it triggered mental connotations and patterned thought behavior of this is your job, and I went into defense protective mode while I took a second, and that's what I came back talking about. I couldn't leave by the end of my job. I couldn't leave anyone to trust them to not put their foot in their mouth. And it's nothing is ever as bad as it seems like in the moment to a publicist who's in control of the situation.
But in your mind, it's avoidable in general. You don't have to even go down a certain road. So why would you?
Which is your thing and our thing of be present with your thoughts, choose your words.
It's tough.
And it's so hard in the moment. And that's all I saw out of yesterday. And I'm so glad to be able to talk about it so blatantly with you.
I was going to say it's something that we both fight. I think everybody fights if they're aware of it. But I think it's one of the things that doing this podcast will probably help us with in the real world, just as far as through line thinking and maybe finishing thoughts and not getting caught up in the ADD society of ping pong, ping pong, wherever the fuck, and you never finish a single thing.
And I could see yesterday how all three of us and then I obviously expanded out, but like how all three of us got caught up in our own feelings about whatever the word of the moment was.
Yeah.
None of us, and
That's a great observation.
where the through line gets lost because everyone goes into their own head because they feel something, and
And everyone hangs on to their own part.
and then you've got three lightning rods, like all doing their own shit, and it's like
And there's no communication happening at that point anymore either, right?
There's no to me beneficial communication. It's all people just saying things at each other. Which,
Yeah, that's tough. It's tough. But I will say this, watching it back, it wasn't as bad or as uncomfortable as it seemed at the time. I don't know if the people who've watched it would agree with that. I don't know if that's just our opinion of, it was really uncomfortable in the room and it wasn't so bad watching it on television. Or if it's a matter of, maybe it just, when you're caught up in it, it seems worse than it actually is.
I think it's
like forget being in person, just like, the first,
It's a combination. It's like the process of desensitization, so broaden that out to like violence in video game. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's seeing it. I woke up today with a pit in my stomach of like, I really hope my first thought was, I hope no one watched it. And
you're not crying right now. You just swallowed wrong, right?
No,
so everyone knows that's your MS throat. You're
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have autoimmune, whenever you get inflammation. I used to get keloids really bad. Like I would get, like, I remember I pierced my ears and I got like a big,
oh my gosh.
So it happens in my throat frequently, which is, I think, why I sound like I can't swallow, whatever.
But you do genuinely have trouble swallowing.
Yeah.
That's also that's one of the MS things too, right?
I'm sorry. I think my inflammation keloid problem is an MS factor that existed.
Goes much deeper.
It goes much deeper and was just called something superficial for 20 years.
I gotcha. Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't clear on that.
No, not at all. These are all, this is sort of the reason for doing this podcast, was to talk about all of this stuff. So when something comes up, I think we should talk about it, even though we're not keeping with our through line, which was the point of the conversation.
Yeah.
But anyway, before you started coughing, you were actually making a point.
What was my point?
Getting caught up in the moment with the emotion of watching it on television. It didn't seem as...
desensitized, whatever. Mm-hmm. I woke up hoping two things simultaneously, that no one watched it and that everyone watched it, because I felt so awful. But then I realized everyone does it, which is why I think like we can harness it. Like you can desensitize yourself to yourself, which is, I think, what will let everyone be less aggressive and defensive and have so much fear about, like, what am I saying? Are they going to read it wrong? Are they going to think it's wrong? Are they going to think I'm a bad person? Like, if you can go through all that shit in your own head, it desensitizes you to whatever. You said something yesterday that kind of speaks to the same thing.
Okay.
Of... You've made decisions and you had to go through all this to make this project even think to happen. You have to go through and say, yes, I agree with that. Yeah, that sucked. Yes, this was my part in it, blah, blah, blah. And then move on.
I consider it the reconciliation factor of, it's not, I don't want to go too far down the way. All right, I'm going to stay here. I was going to akin it to something else that's a little too deep maybe for this. I think that, just everybody is you're a product of your experiences, which we were saying yesterday. And when you get to a certain emotional and intellectual maturity point, you can start to reconcile everything, the good, the bad, every bad thing you've ever done in your life.
Yeah.
I was about to start going down the life review thing, which is really that's a much more internal thing, but the process is incredibly similar, where you just, for me, it was reconciling something I did that I was never proud of, even though I sort of remedied the thing in the situation or in the moment. I didn't have the emotional strength to put that anywhere forever. That was my problem. If I had grown up a stronger person and maybe with a different upbringing, whatever the fuck. If I were a different person at that age, I think that whole thing would have gone differently. You know what I mean? I am a product of whatever, And it was that immature product of whatever at the time that did something. So if you're looking back on it, call it 20 years later, which it was for me, how in the fuck can you still judge someone that, I mean, you're not that same person anymore. You know, oh, geez, that whole time. Sorry about that. I've got to get used to these cameras. Then another monologue on you. No, but you know what I mean. I feel like I want to cut that whole thing because I was not at all ready to talk about it. So my thoughts weren't together, but blah.
Well,
sorry for the blah.
All just for okay, this is great because this is exactly how I felt yesterday, and like all of this kind of like figuring shit out part is like, honestly, it feels very to me like. Now I'm all self-conscious because you told me yesterday I said like too much. So now even if it's like a
no, I
real
asked you
part
if you
of
thought
my,
you
I did
like too much.
I don't like that word at all. But now even if I use it as a proper word in a sentence, I triggered. It feels very much to me like media training and like Sundance before the big people buy a movie. This is the stuff that gets worked out in the smaller rooms of. What is the movie really about? You get the vibe from early on reporters and small events like a Sundance Film Festival of, okay, this is what we think about this movie. We love it. The jury seems to enjoy it. But then you get like the first audience looks at it and they take something totally different away from it. And then everyone, and it's horribly uncomfortable for people looking at all the pieces or the people that just... If you're the star of the movie and your job is to be the star of the movie, then you don't necessarily have to think about all the psychological pieces that are going into people's reactions to it. Right. But if you're a producer trying to sell it, you might think about that because you might have to sell it differently. You might have to tone part of it down. You might have to change the title.
Do you know that was actually, I don't know if that was a sidebar, please.
No, go.
No. Do you remember we were doing a different podcast with Kali, who was here yesterday? That's still in development, but we were talking about names for it, and Read the Room was going to be my number one. Read the Room.
I think that's a great one, and
we were all supposed to come back with titles, and that was going to be mine.
I like that. That was part of it too yesterday because you guys do have a podcast, and I think it got confusing. Like, was it? Was it ours or was
that's
it?
What happened. She and I went into like, oh, we're having this dark, intimate, conversation. And you're totally, yep, that's what happened. Got to stay present. But that's the emotional point you were talking about, right? That takes over.
Yeah, because the emotion, I think the emotion always takes over, and people are at different levels of awareness of their own emotional capabilities. So they can get swept away with emotions and just ramble, or they can get really closed off and tight about it. Which is to go back to me because I like to talk about me. But to me, that's the MS break of like, how rigid are you forcing your thoughts to be? Because mine matriculated because I'm wired wrong. Mine matriculated into how rigid did I let my body become? Yeah, and so physically, and that's so crazy to think about. But that's to me how I feel all the time. So I have to look at it as that's how it is with my body and accept it and go, okay, now what?
Do we call the rigidity as that stored trauma as well? Is that how that works? You're dealing with, you're holding something else so tight, like clenching a fist, that all of a sudden your whole arm is...
It's protection against re-triggering stored trauma.
Okay.
It's a defense mechanism. Again, you didn't do sports, but if you played soccer like I did, this would be like when there's a penalty kick, like you all align in front of your goal, like your goalie, to protect your goalie, to give them a little added weight of like, okay, yes, it's your job. If it goes in, ultimately it's your job. But if there's 12 of us in front of you, maybe we can get in front of it. Not only to block it, but to turn it into a positive of like, we could run it down the field and score and that'd be fine.
Well, if you're talking about Michael Knight versus team sports, I mean, I've always been a loner because I was an only child who spent all his time alone. You know what I mean? So I never really figured out how to do the team thing until the workforce, because I didn't go to college either. So it's really weird. It was finally the workforce, and that was, I wouldn't even call it an awakening. It was more of like you get along as well as you can for as long as you can until eventually it's sort of a wake up call where, hey, but there's a lot of other people and money involved here. You can't just be calling the shots.
Yeah.
I mean, once you get to a producer level, you sort of ish can, but when you're a coordinator, or a supervisor, or something like that.
We're all in a position of power in our little bubble.
In the bubble,
of
yeah.
whatever we're doing. So,
For sure.
if you're this role on this show, you are king shit. But if you go to an award show and you're with people in the same position of other shows of higher caliber,
Who are you? Right?
no one. You might as well not be there.
Yeah.
Like we talked about Chris Rock yesterday, which I don't necessarily want to focus on, but I say it only because he hosted the Oscars one year, and I went as a guest of his, not as a publicist. And so there's way different connotations to people in the business, people that worked on producing the show, people that watched the show on the telecast. Like I borrowed a dress from another client of mine that I did not fit into. I look like a sausage. And no one on the carpets knew what to say. Like the whole thing is weird.
Like a sausage. Like to see a frame of that.
Oh, I'll get it to you. It's out there.
Fair enough. All right. Well, that aside, I wanted to talk more about you and how your brain went during all of that yesterday, because it was, it's the type of thing you were saying, well, can we stop it? And it was like, we could have stopped it. Maybe somebody would say that we should have stopped it. I'm of the opinion that it was exactly how it should have been, in that's the name of this podcast is life. You know what I mean? That's our life. And I feel like showing not just our life, I mean, not just the fact that it's our life, but showing what happens with MS, quite frankly, is part of what we're doing here. And it's important to me, not just to, I really want to show everyone what my life is like dealing with you. It's awful. No,
but it is.
Obviously,
I get that.
Obviously, I don't mean that. But I do mean just, you said yesterday that a couple of people have reached out saying, I'm glad you're doing this, because we didn't necessarily know what to say or how to deal, how to handle. It's kind of almost where we wrapped up yesterday, so maybe this is good. I find that even I don't necessarily. I mean, we're figuring this out by the moment, not even by the day. Or Kali was saying like, oh, the week, hump day, like hump day.
When that part came on, I was like,
I was like, it's when people didn't understand that increments in the movie industry are 6 minutes instead of an hour, a half an hour, 15 minutes. Where I'm like, no, everything matters. It all depends on how finite the pieces are, and when you have to deal with something that could be different every second, every minute for sure. Yeah, the counts of a week or a month or whatever are almost like the years at this point, and we deal with days certainly, but really hours. And sometimes minutes.
When I'm interacting with other people, it is for sure hours. And when it's just me, it's minutes and seconds. Because for a multitude of reasons, I have weirder issues with time now. And that throws me off. If I'm literally in a vacuum of like, how many? Oh, well, I mean, sorry, I got so
No, it's good.
excited.
It's good.
When I'm sitting there, a lot of our research for one of the projects is comedy driven. So I feel like sometimes my role is to be the contemporary awareness of like what's out there and like
Totally.
what are people talking about.
Yeah, you had to spoon feed me current people because I'm still dealing with Gary Shandling and Letterman and George Carlin and all the old guys.
Because you have the heart of the emotion of the project that we're doing, which is what people connect to. But when you're trying to talk to people only using outdated reference points,
Yeah, it's
you
awful.
lose you're saying things with such emotion of like, this whole thing, I'm so much like this really warm, awesome person. And
People
they
were
saw
like, man, I wish I liked Winston Churchill as much as you did.
So I watch a lot of comedy specials that are out. I was saying yesterday, like late night, 2 shows specifically every day, because I know the people involved in all of these shows and all of these specials and these.
The folks making them all.
I know the people making it. I know the people booking it. I know the people culling the news for research. I know how that's done. So to me, it's an antisocial way to be social. because I at least can connect with someone who saw the show and be like, oh, remember that bit.
And it keeps you current. I mean, as cord cutters, it's easy to get out of the loop a little bit. You know what I mean? Without television on all the time. And by the way, I consider it a gift to not.
It is a gift. It's another element that screws with my time understanding, though, because not having something on consistently in the background that you can connect to a clock, I think is just one of those.
Well, now we're going to break the whole time as an illusion barrier.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm just saying in general. What you're saying is exactly why human beings tie into time, whereas it's not real.
It's not. We just have different markers for it. So
Sure.
when I came back yesterday, to me, like a year ago, my head went to like every situation I'd ever been in like that one. Not even the one that was happening. And again, like nothing wrong happens. It was just like, how do you explain a story? And I always go back to that kind of, I think it's a Buddhist thing of like, you've got 12 people blindfolded in a room and you're asking them all to describe what they're touching or what. It's one elephant. They're all just holding on to different parts of it. So if you've got the trunk and you've got the left foot and you've got the tooth, like you're all touching different things. Why would you put together that it's an elephant unless you all talk together? It's like those games where like people are blind, they stand in line with letters facing out the different way and they have to run around to spell a word.
Wow. I actually know what you're talking about, like on Hollywood Game Night or something like that.
Yeah, okay. Yep, that's what I was Jalen.
For a moment, I thought, when you said in line, I thought like when we're in Disneyland and people have their iPhone on their head to play whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
Well, it looks fun. It looks fun. I'm not going to say it's stupid. It's only stupid because we're not playing with them. It's only stupid because we didn't get invited to partake. Whatever that one is it all the same?
I think it's similar.
You're talking about compartmentalization, where everyone has a chunk. If we could all put it together, we could build the atom bomb, or so to speak.
If everyone
something more positive, hopefully.
Something more positive, but it also to me reminds me to like step back and like what you're holding is one piece of something. So
zoom out.
Stop thinking that the tusk that you're holding is the only thing that defines that creature. It's just not.
That's such a good point. Now I kind of finally see what you mean, and I was hanging on to the wrong shit. It's more on the lines of not even don't judge a book by its cover, but just people have a lot of facets.
People have a lot of facets, and you were saying like we were yesterday like holding on to emotions, and it's like, yes, we all hold on to emotions, except that there's an emotional energy that happens when you and I are in a room together. When she comes into a room, she modifies that because she's got her own. Sure. And then
anyone.
All that to say anyone. So imagine it like when you're outside or whatever, like when you meet people new for the first time, you don't know what they're holding on to or why, and whether they want to talk about it or not. And I don't have barriers because so much of what I struggle with is normalcy. If I hibernated away and didn't ever leave this house, no one would know I was sick and no one would care. And it would bother me less because I would be confronted with my disability less. But because that's not enjoyable for me sometimes, or the mere fact that just living on Earth, you have to go outside once in a while and interact with other people, like... Who do you ask for help from and how and what? And like, is it weird to ask someone next to you to like hand you the salt for the third time? Or do you get up and go get your own salt? Like, I don't know. And so to me, that's what I struggle with, which is why yesterday was like an embarrassing example of just everyday life of like, I walked into a conversation that I was not physically comfortable with because it wasn't what I left, and time screwed in my head because I went to a bunch of different places, and like, all I feel now, I mean, horribly awkward, weird. No. All I'm left with, though, is that I left you guys in an awkward situation. And that's what I have trouble reconciling is like, okay, I've owned the fact that I'm going to be the person that brings out pain in myself and others just by virtue of existing. But I don't like putting that on other people that don't ask for it.
Well, I think you're giving yourself a lot of power.
Yes, I'm also very self-important these days.
No, I'm just saying in general. Yeah, you're right. Maybe given the option, you would have modified your behavior in some way. But at the same time, I mean, did it hurt us in any way? There was a misunderstanding, and I feel like that's life. You know what I mean? Like you left the room and you didn't hear something the same way, or you weren't reading the same tone and vibe that we were, or whatever. Just we did go off track. Whatever the heck, doesn't really matter. I think you should still have the feelings that you have about it, right? And then you just happened to come back in, and your brain was weird. And I think I said something, and whatever I said definitely stopped you in your tracks. And then it was like I cut the cord on your thinking, like your thinking artery. You know what I mean? Like that's what it looked like. I literally took the wind out.
Yeah, I watched it happen. I had connected to a different role. Once it was positioned to me like I had one, I connected to anything my body.
But why did that happen even? Because we had the conversation ahead of time, and we said, like, does that work? Is it just that I shouldn't have said even that word on air of just the publicist thing, that your old life, it's that much of a trigger? Which is okay. I'm just asking.
I hate to say yes. I don't know if that's the real reason, but for me, it's the role of responsibility that goes with that word.
Because you're the only one who actually knows what that. The rest of us don't actually know.
Yeah, it's like to me, it reminds me of being a parent. I imagine of like, it's your kid. If you know your kid doesn't want to share, someone making it share, it's gonna cause a big fucking problem. It's like you have to know your kid. You have to know your project. You have to know yourself, how you deal publicly with things. And I'm learning it in live time. So I'm going to be embarrassed sometimes. That's okay.
I'm sorry you're embarrassed.
At least
I don't think you should be, but that doesn't mean anything, I'm sure.
I think a lot of people live very comfortably in a life, and they designed it as such, where they're single for a long time, or they don't have kids or whatever. They're not confronted with someone else who's less polite, very blatantly being like, you're doing it wrong. And having to say yes or no, am I? And if yes, why? It's like that old adage of like, because I said so. Like, that only works if I believe in you. Mm-hmm. If I think you're an idiot and you're like, because I said so, I'm like, that means nothing. That means less. I'm more apt to not do it because you said so.
Yeah.
So I think that responsibility of being responsible for anything puts a different energy on people. So that word triggered that in me of different.
So for you, it went from being a conversation into work mode almost.
Yeah.
Like this is a social conversation, and then you felt the need to. But I don't think anybody was actually asking that of you. I mean, do you know that part?
I don't think it matters because ultimately someone has to be responsible. And no, you're right. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. It does matter that no one asked that of me, but
No. I'm not saying that you didn't do exactly what was asked of you. I'm saying that I don't know that anybody meant to say, hey, you should stop having a conversation now and start working because this is your job. I think that you may have taken it that way, but in reality, I was just saying like, oh, this is your old wheelhouse. So if you say we can talk about it, we can. And you know what I mean? I mean, you chose to get up at that point and go make a cup of coffee. I thought that was kind of weird, to be honest. I don't have a problem with it, but I thought it was a little bit weird.
Here's what is weird is that the same thing that happens to me all the time with you of muscle memory, of like neurological muscle memory, like ideological, what should I do? Instinctual, yes or no, left or right, whatever. Mm-hmm. That whole thing went through my head right before I got up. I felt myself get irritated, and I was like, I want more coffee because I want to. I went through that whole thought process of you shouldn't get up right now, and I did.
Whoa, that's crazy. I mean, sorry, crazy is the wrong word. I mean, like that's something. It's interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, don't be upset about it, please.
I'm not upset. It's a weird. I don't want to get off track, and I don't know where I'm going, but
no worries.
That happened, and that happens all the time, and that is, I think, part of why I'm so confused, because they all go through my head, and I have to justify all of them of like, but I want coffee. I'm out of coffee. Selfishly, like, I need to get up. Now's a good time for me to go because they're talking. But then the job me is like, listen in, and then like control of the project me is like, that's not how I would have said that.
Were you already stressed out that you had gone through a cup of coffee at that point? Like, was there anything already going on, or was it truly just boom, happened out of nowhere?
The energy was never how I would have controlled it to be from the beginning.
Oh,
and I
okay.
think that's what my body was reacting to. So I already felt out of control. So I was like, whatever.
Okay. I hope that we are co-hosts on this. You know what I mean? So that if there's any energy control to be done or whatever, you don't think it's just me dictating or anything. I don't want it to be that. I mean, it's sort of set up, just because we didn't really know what we're doing. We could be on the same side of the you know what I mean? Like that. None of that stuff matters to me.
I said to one of your friends one time who was having trouble with his girlfriend, and everything he said sounded super logical and nice and so sweet and nicer than any guy I'd ever talked to about stuff. And he had a reaction that I was surprised by of like, well, I don't get it. Why doesn't she just, I offer all the shit to her. And he was so irritated. And I said to him, you're offering her something she doesn't understand. Because being a single girl, having to fight for everything for so long, just to live, just to get by, like not, and I'm not saying like life is harder for anybody, whatever, specifically, but I had a point of saying any of this in the first place.
Offering the wrong shit, offering stuff she doesn't understand.
Oh, thank you. I want to be your equal in this show. I want to be your co-host. Mm-hmm. I neurologically do not have a template to follow that allows that to be easy.
Okay, well, this is probably much easier than you're making it out to be then. I would like to be your, I would say it's the equivalent of, I would like to be your co-publicist on a job. But I can't do that because I don't have that skill set. Whereas I've been doing this since high school on and off. I mean, not this, I'm not good at it or anything, but like it's been in my head for an awful long time. And I've at least done prep work for it. I don't think this was ever on your list of to do. Like, was this ever a check mark of like, all right, well, I want to buy a house, I want to have a kid, I want to have a talk show?
No, and I said yesterday, like it came up briefly too, like, this was, it's not only that I didn't seek this out, I actively sought to not do this. I chose a profession that specified that I not be visible or have my own voice.
Wear black, stand in the back.
It's so funny. I literally just was writing about this morning. It's one of the notes that I'm putting in my book.
Nice.
Because I'd been doing the job of a publicist or an assistant or whatever the fuck. It all gets convoluted. But I'd been on hundreds of press carpets and press lines and premieres and whatever. I had switched companies. I'd been doing this for years.
When you say years, we're talking about 8, 9 years, maybe 10 years?
Under 10, but close.
Okay.
Before someone casually in a conversation, not even to me, was like, you know why publicists wear black? I was like, what are you talking about?
Your dresses were red, green, blue.
All different colors.
White.
All different colors. And I was like, why? They're like, so publicists can be cut out of photos. And like, I had a moment of being horrified. And then I was like, oh, logically, yeah, on paper, totally. Because no one wants the chubby broad that doesn't have a glam squad doing her up before the event.
Nobody wants anybody that's not whoever they're shooting in the back of the show.
Yeah. Yes. It's a way nicer way to say that. But when your job is to be with us, like on them and the whole whatever, that's a really hard physical thing to reconcile. And people are shitty. Like photographers are like, publicists, get out of the way. Like, I don't like your hair. Like they were so
Jelly bean, take a seat.
And it's like, Yeah.
I heard one of those. I remember that.
So it's like, okay. And so, yeah, you can build up an armor and be strong about it. But if you're having a shitty day and you're emotional because you're having your period and you feel fat and someone calls you a name on a press line because you're just fucking there doing your job for the 18th day in a row with no break and you're exhausted and you're like, yo, you should be so glad that I put pants on today, which is not anything you could say to anyone and have them feel bad for you. Except that some days that's how you feel. And having a photographer yell at you and call you ugly because your client is paid to be gorgeous sucks.
Outstanding. God, that was great. I actually would like to keep this short today, if that's all right, just because I'm exhausted. But I did want to cover some things. We just opened this right before, so that's the only reason it's not actually be a proper unboxing. But people are sending us stuff already, which is kind of amazing.
And thoughtful things that really mean so much to us.
It's kind of amazing. This is from Danbury Chive, Danbury, Connecticut. Chive as in chive on, keep calm and chive on. But we got since we were talking about T-shirts, here is and I'll get a picture of this to put in the actual It's a Seinfeld shirt, but it's not Seinfeld. None of them have faces, and the Seinfeld logo says nothing. And I thought that was kind of cool. Here, let me see if I can... There we go, the closest thing. Can we get Hey, Hal, can we get a shot of this? Anyway, I thought that was cool. And then they know we like stickers, so we get some Danbury Chive stickers we'll go in the car or maybe on the thing over there. But I just thought it was so nice, and it's so cool to be part of a community after a week. I mean, some of these are old friends and stuff, but the fact that people are doing this, I just think is...
Well, someone sent us an audio
cool
file of like playing the whatever opening on a guitar.
A guy yesterday. Yeah, another person.
Another friend
played. It was almost looked like the opening of Dukes of Hazzard, and it was just doing da 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 like on a guitar. And he's a professional musician who travels not just the country, the world, because he lives in Canada and he's all over U.S. Doing musical theater. He's a pit orchestra musician as well as a composer and an artist. He's a fabulous artist. We should do shout outs. All right, so Danbury Chive, at Danbury Chive. And then Darren is at Moto Art and
There's a number.
And a number.
Something with 65 in it, I think.
You might be right, but I don't want to say.
Yeah,
Moto Art. All right, Darren, we love you, and we're going to figure out what it is.
His wife's Angela. Mm-hmm. And A.G. Croft, I think, is her.
People we love. Yes. Yeah.
She is, quick shout out to Angela. One of the most random people on one of those days where I thought I was going to have a moment like I did yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I probably had a moment like that with them. With the exception that I have not laughed that hard with a woman, anyone that like I don't know enough to have that kind of laughter with. And we kept catching each other's eye like we were on a date, and like. Do
you know the backstory for how we even?
No,
I don't want to cut you off. I'm sorry.
I just love her, and we'll have them in here at the end.
Yes, absolutely. Next time they're in LA, they will definitely be in the podcast studio. Do you know how that all started?
I don't, which is part of my whole thing of like I wasn't expecting to see anyone, and I was having a day, and then these two people showed up.
This is where Instagram's crazy, or Facebook or something, but we didn't know each other, but I guess we followed each other or something, and posted, hey, we're going to be in LA. Any car stuff we should see, in these dates or whatever. I said, are you going to be here like 2 days earlier or whatever? Because there's a concours at the Santa Monica Museum. It was the Porsche Club of America, Los Angeles region concours d'elegance, and it was at the Santa Monica airport. And it's typically a pretty good one. And we were going to be there and everything. So I said, well, if you can, there's this going on. I don't know if fits your fancy or what. I mean, we didn't know each other. He responds back with the nicest, like heartfelt message. The first thing was just a post in public, and then the messages started. And it was just like, that was so nice of a recommendation. We were able to change our flights. We're really excited. We hope we get to meet you, but not weird at all. In fact, it was the opposite. It was like, oh, all right, well, maybe we'll see them. Maybe we won't. And to the point where I never even told you about it. Then sure enough, we were packing up ready to leave that day, and they came over, and I think we ended up sitting and talking for probably another hour before when we were probably wanting to leave that day.
At least, because, yeah.
But then we ended up going to Malibu Kitchen the next day, and we're telling them, we're like, I don't know if you're going to see any celebrities, and Seinfeld and Spike pull up, and Tom Hanks is sitting behind me. And I don't know. I shouldn't talk about celebrities going there. But it was neat for people who were in from out of town to get some sick cars and some cool celeb stuff. It was...
And to know that at the end of it all, it was just because they wanted to come hang out with us. And I was having a stupid fucking moment of like yesterday, and they saved the day. They said, though, when I'm like that, I must be... I watch it, and to me, I'm like, wow, do I have an annoying toddler? And for you to have to walk around with that annoying toddler all the time must be impossible.
Are you saying you have an annoying toddler?
In me, like, I watch my body disconnect from like, what I'm thinking. And I say, because I say to you all the time, like, well, that's not what I meant. It's not what I was thinking about. It's not what I said. And like, it's not, but it must be what like little kids that throw themselves on the floor feeling.
Right. Like, I'm not going. So I want a hamburger.
So now I understand toddlers. We don't have one. So it's like, okay, the cat or me. And then you poor you. Like,
no, I got my own problems.
I know.
Far from perfect.
Totally. But like in public, I tend to get more like binged and like you might have to be like, get over here. So when we
chose each other, right?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Yes.
Rude.
The energies connect people. But I'm super grateful in those moments, especially for people like Darren and Angela, who are just awesome and light of their own. They dissipate the rest of that.
That's awesome. All right. Well, it's a great way to end on happiness and love. Okay. Please, everybody, just love each other. Go outside, do something, unplug. This has been the Life Podcast. And yeah, we love everybody. Seriously.
Love you.
Ta-da!